So, you want the crown of command for yourself, but why? Is it power you seek? Is it domination over others? Or is it more of a religious calling? Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter, and today, yes, we are doing another Talisman, the Magical Quest game character guide. And this time, we've gone for the priest. Cheeky. Somebody who, well, little spoilers, you're not allowed to use any weapons. You're religious. Your gods don't allow it. So does that affect you? Not necessarily the first character you would think that would be heroic enough to claim the crown of command. We have done lots of other character guides. In fact, we're getting so close to finishing all of the base game character guides, all the characters. We have done all of the expansions, and this is the 4th edition revised. Plus, obviously, we've done the base game review. Anyway, let's crack on. Just see how. Hints and tips for the priest. Yes, please. What is the best strategy for the priest if you are playing the priest? Now, I don't know if you do this when you play Talisman, but we tend to do random characters. We don't pick, you're not allowed to choose. I know some people, and I think I might introduce this actually, where you get dealt 3 cards randomly, and then you get to choose which character you can be. That's quite nice, because then at least there's a little bit of strategy going on. So obviously, sometimes you think, oh no, if you're doing it randomly, it's like, oh okay, it's that character. But don't be fooled, because some characters you think you can underestimate. And I always think the priest is one that people underestimate initially, but then when you get into the nitty-gritty of their special abilities, it's a different story. The priest. So let's look at the priest's stats. Priest starts in the chapel. Alignment, well, is, I was going to say obviously good, but in our world, some of the priests are a bit. But yes, this priest happens to be good. Strength is 2, craft is 4, life is 4, and get this, fate is 5. 5. There aren't that many that start with 5, so that's a slight advantage for you right there. Special abilities, a bit of an overview. You begin the game with 1 spell. After rolling the die when praying, you may add 1 to the score. You may choose to automatically destroy any spirits without resorting to psychic combat. When you destroy a spirit in this manner, you may not keep the enemy as a trophy, but you may gain 1 spell. And the final special ability is you may not use any weapon during battle. So, the priest's strength obviously lies in his craft. Beginning the game with 1 spell, I always find, is quite an advantage if no other character has a spell. And, like the adventure cards, they're random, so you don't quite know what spell you're going to get, but it could be one that really gives you an advantage straight away. For example, if you've got the acquisition spell, and somebody then gets a mule early on in the game. I know you can't steal a mule anymore. You used to be able to steal a mule because it was an object, but now it's a follower. But let's say it's a weapon. I know you can't carry weapons. But anyway, there's things. Say it was the Crown of Solomon, I think, adds 1 to your craft straight away. You might be able to pinch that. Anyway, spells are good. Yes, let's crack on. Let's take a closer look at the special abilities. So, 1, you begin the game with 1 spell. That's pretty straightforward. Yeah, shuffle the spell deck and you will take 1 at random. And like the sorceress and the prophetess, it's always good, as I say, to start the game with a spell, because it does give you a slight advantage over the characters who don't have a spell, because spells can be quite difficult to get hold of during the game. So if you've already got one, then you are quite a little bit of an advantage. Unfortunately though, there are some special abilities in other characters where you instantly get another spell when you cast a spell. With this one, it's a one-shot deal. Once you cast that spell, unless other factors come in, but your actual special ability, you cannot take another spell straight away. So, choose your moment when to cast that spell wisely, and that obviously depends on which spell you have when you get that taken randomly. But, and we'll get onto this in a little bit more, your third special ability does combine well with getting spells. So you could, there is a slightly easier way of getting spells than other characters, but it's not as straightforward as just you automatically get a spell. So as I say, be very careful when you use your spell. And remember, you can keep hold of your spell through the whole game. So you don't have to spend that spell straight away. I know people that do say it was the acquisition spell that you got. They wait right to the end, and when someone's just about to go into the Valley of Fire, they will play an acquisition and take their talisman. So they can't cross into the Valley of Fire. That's quite a clever strategy. That's why I always try to get 2 talismans. 2 talismans. Number 2, after rolling the die when praying, you may add 1 to the score. And that again is fairly straightforward. You do get a chance to pray throughout the game. And obviously it's praying, not just rolling for stuff. It has to specifically say praying. You may pray. And that means you may add 1 to the score. You might not want to. For example, if you land in the temple, which is in the middle region, you may add 1 to the score. You don't have to, but you can. So, for example, if you roll a 2, you roll 2 dice in the temple. So if you roll a 2, you lose 2 lives. A 3, you lose 1 life. If you roll a 4, you lose 1 follower. 5 is enslaved. 6, you gain a strength. 7 is gain a craft. 8 is gain a spell. 9 is gain a spell. 10 is gain a talisman. 11 is gain a fate. 12 is gain 2 fate. So if you roll a 6 out of the 2 die there, you gain a strength, but you might actually want to craft, so that would make it up to 7. And obviously, you can add your score and get a 7. But you might be happy with your strength. You don't have to. So it's a nice little, it's not compulsory, and I quite like that because it gives you that extra bit of choice. As I say, there are various places that you can pray, through adventure cards mainly. Plus, the priest does start with 5 fate. So remember that. You can combine your special ability and a fate. So for example, if you did roll, say, you rolled an 8, and that would gain a spell, but you wanted a talisman, you could re-roll by paying a fate 1 of your die, and hopefully you'll get 9, and then you could add that, score 1 to the score, because your special ability, and get a 10, which means you get a talisman. So that's always good to know. And number 3, you may choose automatically destroy any spirits without resorting to psychic combat. When you destroy a spirit in this manner, you do not keep the enemy as a trophy, but you may gain 1 spell. So, a brilliant way, and probably one of the main ways to gain craft or strength, because that's kind of ultimately what you want to do. You need to get craft and strength to be able to combat the middle and certainly the inner regions of the board. You collect trophies. So when you kill an enemy, depending if it's a strength or a craft, once you get a points total of 7, so say there was a boar that was strength 3 and another boar that was strength 7, you hang on to them until you get collectively 7. And then you cash it in for strength or a craft. Well, with this one, it's saying that there's an advantage. Because you're a priest, you just automatically can destroy enemy spirits. They won't attack you, you don't lose a life, nothing happens, but you can't then claim it. Because obviously there is one, I think there's the demon that's strength 10. So which obviously if you get that early on in the game, your craft isn't going to be anywhere near that. So you won't want to necessarily fight it, but you could destroy it. Now if you could keep it as a trophy, you would cash it in straight away for a craft. But it's just to equal it out. So you can destroy it, but there is that, again, a little balancing out. You get a spell, you can gain a spell. So rather than have it as a trophy, you gain a spell. So you might want to weigh up in the early part of the game to actually use that special ability to gain more spells. Obviously, you do have to make sure your craft can cope with the amount of spells that you want. So I would recommend, balance it between actually fighting those spirits, because then you can collect them as trophies to then, get your craft higher. But I would also recommend, every now and again, get those spells, because again, especially early on, if they're struggling to get spells, you've got your own way of generating how to get spells. So don't be, I would work out the best way, and obviously that just depends on how the game is unfolding. And the last special ability is you may not use a weapon during battle, which, is a little bit of a downside, obviously. It does what it says on the tin. You cannot use any weapons, and that includes magical weapons. If it says weapons on the card, you can't use it. But that doesn't mean you cannot carry weapons or magical weapons. Yeah? Clever. So you can carry them. You might want to do that to prevent other characters from getting them, because obviously if you drop it and someone else lands on that space, they can pick it up and start using it, and presumably they can use it against you. Nobody wants that. So you can carry it to prevent other characters having them, or, and this is always satisfying when you're the priest, go and sell it. You go to the alchemist. I think the alchemist hangs out in the city, I'm pretty sure. Go to the alchemist and then just sell your weapons and watch other characters, watch other players go, oh no, but I wanted that. I was going to come and try and get that off you. And no, you've sold it, because then you get gold, and then if you build up enough gold, when there's an opportunity to buy a mule, I always like to buy a mule because you can carry an extra 4 items. Or a war horse, they're very handy, especially if you can't use weapons, because that means you add your craft and strength together. Then, yeah, do that as many times as possible. If you do get weapons, hang on to them and then go and cash them in. That's always a beautiful thing to do. The downside to the priest, well, to say there's no real downside, because you are quite powered up. You've got quite a few special abilities. But using the weapons, you can flip it. That's the downside. You can't use any weapons. And they obviously give you extra strength in battle. And that isn't your strong point, especially early on in the game. The favourable place on the board for good characters in the outer region, go to the chapel. If you are good, you either heal up to your life value for free, which is always a bonus, or you can pray, and this is another place where you can pray. And remember, you can add 1 to the die result. 1 to 4 is ignored, 5 is gain a life, 6 is gain a spell. So that's always good. Go there, because you can either gain a life, which is always handy, or you can gain a spell, which is beautiful. So make sure your craft is good enough so you can have 3 spells. The crags, go to the crags. Again, if you roll a 6, the barbarian leads you out and gain a strength. So early on, your strength isn't brilliant. So enemies you know that use battle combat where you have to fight them with strength, you might struggle. Go to the crags, and remember, if you do get a 6, then you do get a strength, but there are slight downsides to 1 to 3. Normally in Talisman, 1 to 3 are not so good. 4, 5, and 6 are normally better when you roll the die. Go to the forest as well. It's the same as the crags, but when you roll a 6, a ranger guides you out and you gain 1 craft. So again, a good way to get your craft up without necessarily fighting, especially if you are destroying those spirits to not collect them as trophy and you want the spells. This is a good way to get craft. Go to the city. Oh yes, go to the enchantress and you can either gain a strength or a craft. You cannot add 1 to the score, as I say, because it's not praying. But if you are lucky, remember you've got 5 fate though, this is always good. 4 you gain a craft, 5 you gain a strength, 6 is gain a spell. So there's good stuff there. But remember, if you roll a 1, you are turned into into a slimy, tiny little toad for 3 turns. But 2, you lose a strength, 3, you lose a craft. But if you haven't powered up any strength or craft, you cannot go below your starting value. So again, there's only really a risk of getting turned into a toad, but you've got 5 fate. The other good places for good characters are the ruins and the oasis. Draw 2 adventure cards. Obviously, if you want to start destroying these spirits to gain spells, draw as many adventure cards as you can. You can draw 2 at the same time, unless one's already there, but you can draw 2 at the same time, so that's always a bonus. And if you pop over to the middle region, you can go to the Hidden Valley to draw 3 adventure cards. So again, you hopefully you'll get 3 cool stuff. Everybody likes items. Everybody, you might get a bag of gold. You might get a weapon, which again you could convert to gold. You might get a magic object that gives you more craft and more strength. It's worth doing. Places to avoid, well, if you are good, do not go to the graveyard because you will automatically lose a life, and that's never ever good. Middle region is nowhere specific that a good character to avoid. Obviously, there are normal places to avoid like the desert, but that applies to all characters because you'll lose a life if you haven't got a water bottle. The best route to go in the inner region, well, it's more likely to be craft because you start with craft 4. That's your higher value, but as I keep saying, you do need to build up your strength and craft, really. I like to get them to close to 10 as possible before I make a challenge for the Crown of Command. But yeah, so the craft route is kind of slightly easier, especially as, you can destroy enemies or you can, it's kind of easier for the priest, I always find, to go for the craft route, to power up your craft. That means you'll be going the mind route. You roll 3 dice and then you will subtract your craft from the total and move directly to that. So ultimately you're aiming for a minus number. So the higher your craft, the more likely you are to get a minus number, or 0, which means you stay at the mines. The Vampire's Tower. Suffer blood loss. So what you do is you roll 1 die and you can see how many lives the vampire takes, but you can push followers in front of the vampire who will take the hit for you. If you roll a 1 to 2, you lose a life. 3 to 4, lose 2 lives. 5 to 6, lose 3 lives. So that's why it's always good to try to go to places to get more than your starting value of lives. The pits. Fight the pit fiends, roll 1 die, fight that many pit fiends with that strength. So it's strength of 4. And then you fight them 1 by 1 until each of them are dead, or until you are defeated. So again, that's what I mean. You do have to, even though you're going the craft route, for some reason they put a strength challenge in. So again, I would power up your strength, but more than likely you're going to power up your craft. And just to recap, choose wisely when you use your starting spell, because you won't automatically get one back. Try to pray as much as possible. If there's an opportunity to pray, any adventure cards or any places on the board that you can go to pray, because you can add 1 to the score. And that could be the difference of getting a talisman, not getting a talisman, getting a spell, not getting a craft, you get the picture. Number 3, when your craft allows, destroy spirits to get more spells, especially in the early part of the game, because most people won't necessarily have spells. You will have that advantage. And 4, visit the chapel, replenishes lives. Crags, gain a strength. Forest, gain a craft. Enchantress, gain a craft, strength, or spell. Go to the Ruins Oasis Hidden Valley to get more than 1 adventure card. And it's always good when you pull up loads of objects and say, yes, I've got loads of objects in one go. And of course, go the craft route, go the mines route to the inner region. The priest, yes. The priest is pretty good. I don't think I've actually won with the priest, but I've got close. The priest is good. You use the tactics, you use your special abilities wise, and certainly use your spells when you can do. There we go. As I say, we've done pretty much all of the base game character guides now. There's only one more character, I think, which is, I can't remember which it is. But check out our channel. We have got a playlist, so you can, of Talisman, you can just binge watch. We've got loads. As I said, we've got the reviews of all the expansions and the base game as well. And pretty much, I think it's at least 13 now. I think 13 character guides. We will be doing more. We'll be going into other expansions that have new characters. So there's plenty more of where these came from. Oh yes. Thank you so much for watching. And remember to keep it unreal, especially if you are the power of God.